I wish everybody a very warm good afternoon. And let me take 2 minutes to thank the organizers for making me a part of this academic event. It's a 2-day international conference, as we all know, on language, literature, and social sciences. So, big thanks to the PG and Research Department of English, Annai Vallankani College, Kanyakumari, and the Cape Comorin Trust, Cape Comorin Publisher India Limited. And a big thanks to Professor Shelja Vasudeva to have invited me here. I look forward to a very invigorating and very lively session out here. And not wasting any more time, I think I expect that the presenters have been already announced, since I'm joining a bit late.
No, ma'am, I haven't announced.
You have, sir?
No, ma'am, haven't.
So, may I please have your name and the presenter's name quickly?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
That would enable me to pronounce the names in good
Yeah,
manner, sir.
Yeah, nice. Sibimol Babu, Aparna Joy, Donna Maria Joseph, and the last one is Anne Mary Jacob.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So now, our first presenter on board is Shibimol Babu from St. Cyrus College, Adur, Kerala. And the topic is Landscape as Character, finding psychological parallels in the geography and climate of the setting in J.M. Coetzee's Waiting for the Barbarians. So I think it's a world-famous work, and it's a loud statement somehow on the the colonial and post-colonial world. So we are looking forward to a very invigorating one from you. Welcome, Chibimo.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the good introduction. My name is Shibimol Babu. Shall I present to the audience?
Yes, of course.
So my topic is Landscape as a Character, Finding Psychological Parallels in the Geography and Climate of the Setting in J.M. Coetzee's Waiting for the Barbarians. I hope all of you are familiar with this particular novel of J.M. Coetzee. So Waiting for the Barbarians by J.M. Coetzee depicts how we can find equivalence of human feelings and emotions in the portrayal of a novel setting. So this paper, my intention is to analyze how nature and the geography of the landscape play a crucial role in delineating the emotional and psychological journey of the characters. I hope you may know the summary of the novel, but those who don't, I'll give you a brief summary. The novel narrates the transformation of an old magistrate from a self-loathing womanizer to a compassionate and empathetic human being. He is serving the empire at a remote frontier, which is thought to be attacked by barbarians anytime soon. But we can see that in the novel, no barbarians are there. It's only this thought of barbarians is there. The magistrate becomes emotionally connected to a girl who was brought to the barracks as a prisoner. And this magistrate has a dream which is recurring. And this makes him feel that this girl is not like any other woman who was after him or he had some sexual connections with. But this girl, this magistrate portrays himself as a fatherly figure. And he wants her to meet her family, his people. And on a false expedition to the place of the barbarians, he takes this girl to that place and leaves her with her people. And when he comes back, the empire finds that he has actually threatened them and they caught him as a prisoner. That's the brief summary of the novel. And while I was reading the novel, I thought that the emotional condition of the characters is also conveyed deliberately by exploiting the archetypes and geography of the land. The land, the geography, is a powerful character in the novel. The frozen, dusty, or at times wintry setting of the novel itself acts as a major character in the novel. The old magistrate, he is at the service of the empire. He narrates a land that changes over time, just as the characters in the novel transforms. So the transformation of the characters are very evident in the very transformation of the geography itself. The youthful days and sexual liberty of the magistrate is elaborated using summer, and the endless waiting for the barbarians is covered in winter. So we can see the contrast in the seasons, just in the characters or the psychological changes that is happening to the lives of the characters. I'll quote from the text. The magistrate says, "If there was anything to be envied in opposition to the frontier, my friends told me it was the easy morals of the oasis, the long scented summer evenings, the complacent, slow eyed women." So, from this quote, we can understand that summer is actually signifying the youthful and lusty days of the old magistrate. So, summer itself is something playful, something that is very luxurious. And there's another quote. "I think with yearning of the familiar routine of my duties, of the approaching summer, the long dreamy siestas, conversations with friends at dusk under the walnut trees, with boys bringing tea and lemonade, and the eligible girls in twos and threes promenading before us on the square in their finery." So we can get from these lines that summer is something that is signifying his youthful days or a free, easy life of the magistrate at the frontier. Then there's another quote. "Sighing, I lay myself down on the bed in the sweet remembered scent of flowers. How inviting to join the rest of the town in its siesta. These days, these hot spring days, already becoming summer. How easy I find it to slip into their languorous mood." So we can see that the magistrate was enjoying a very happy and very entertaining life there in the oasis. Though he was a magistrate, he was a country magistrate, a person who was having a lot of official duties. His life was something that was very happy and was in a languorous mood. The novel is in first person narrative, which begins with Colonel Joel's inspection, where he comments, "You would find them useful out here in the desert." So we come to the setting where it is a desert where nothing is going on. Life is very plain. The summer is wheeling slowly towards its end. In the novel, just like the old magistrate, who is out his days on his lazy frontier, waiting to retire, the early part of the novel's climate is late summer, just like the peace and happiness the magistrate was enjoying in his life. So we can find a connection between the climate and the geography, and also with the things which are happening in the lives of the characters. So the nature and the very environment is playing a role in explaining to the reader that what's actually happening. When there is a shift in the scenario, we come to know that there are changes, there are transformations happening. And he says, it is the court of the magistrate. "Late summer, a time of peace and plenty, I believe in peace, perhaps even peace at any price. At any price. The easy summer days perfectly matches with the internal freedom and happiness in the mind of the old magistrate." So we can see that J.M. Coetzee is intentionally conveying his ideas into the landscape of the novel setting. We can see the playful attitude of the magistrate. He has a habit of collecting nomadic scripts inscribed in wooden planks and spending time idly looking at the moon. So we get this very easy, free mood and happiness of the magistrate through the season itself. And when with the advent of Colonel Joel, we can see that things are changing a bit. So the place which was once very tidy and clean, and it changes into something else when Joel comes there. The serenity and neatness of the place equates with the mental status of the magistrate. Everything is upside down with the coming of Colonel Joel. But soon after he leaves the frontier, everything is back to normalcy. And there is another strong season which represents the rest of the novel, what happens in the life of the magistrate. So I have already told you that the magistrate was a person who was an adventure loving person, especially with women. But later in his life, we can see it's the presence of winter. So winter represents the transformation of the magistrate from a womanizer to a person who has realized the true value of life. As winter descends on the land, the magistrate's sexual sterility also begins. So just like the myths in most universal myths, winter is representing some kind of sterility in his life. And there's a quote from the text. This is the last night we sleep in the same bed. I move a cot into the parlor and sleep there. Physical intimacy between us ends. For the time being, I say, until the end of winter, it is better so. We can see that with the advent of winter, that summer or the playfulness of the magistrate goes away. And there is another quote. Sometimes on a good morning, I am enabled to live again all the strength and swiftness of my manhood. Like a wraith, I glide from break to break. Shod in boots that I have soaked in 30 years of grease, I wade through icy water. So we can see that when when the winter comes, there is a change in the life and the kind of entertainments that the magistrate loved once. I caught. For premonitions of winter are everywhere. In the early hours of the morning, a chilly breeze rises in the north. So there's a change in the scenario of the novel where everything changes, and the magistrate cannot no longer look at the girl he had in his custody with a sexual interest. He is no longer loving her in the way that he used to love women. And we get the silent approach of the barbarians to assert the empire, just like the approaching winter. So the winter is very moody. At the same time, it has secrets within it. So the whole novel is actually waiting for the barbarians. So the winter itself is like the approaching barbarians. There's an exodus of the magistrate with the girl to meet her people, and it is through cold winter. The place is covered in snow. The journey itself acts as a psychological parallel of the transformation of the old magistrate's character. So these are the things that I have found in the novel, which is actually showing what has happened to the magistrate and how the setting of the novel itself plays a very crucial role in narrating what happened to the characters' lives. And we can see that it's very powerful, just like the character of the magistrate or the girl. The landscape, the geography, and the climate of the setting of the work is very important. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you.
Yes, it was a wonderful analysis. As I was going through the looking at the characters and looking at the nomad girl's character as well as the other girl, this prostitute with whom the magistrate has this relationship, and how with the change of the seasons this relationship also undergoes a change, and then they travel and he wants to kind of deposit her back into her barbaric people, but they don't turn out to be barbaric, of course. But I just felt that uh, uh, how Coetzee has, and how you have also taken this take, you have embarked your paper on the geographical setting and the landscape, and this is a perspective which is new to me, because uh, as much as I have analyzed this novel and thought more often, I have always found that it may be post-colonial story or a take at that, a perspective from that. But today I have got to see this novel from purely new angle, and thanks to you, uh, Shibimol, a wonderful perspective of analyzing this beautiful novel. It has layers, psychological layers, emotional layers. What the magistrate undergoes, he sort of he falls spiritually in love, or emotionally in love with the idea of this nomad girl, and discovering who she was later on, how she narrates her story, and then she tells him, and how injured she was, not only from the physical aspect, also from the emotional and psychological state of her mind, and how it reflects in his mood and reflects in the mood of the winter around. So congratulations to you, but I felt that you could have really forayed or explored the aspect of his relationship with the nomad girl also, how it turns cold, and how it turns cold and how he suffers when he comes back, his suffering, and he's put into the prison and he has to undergo a lot of torture, and he experiences the same pain that this nomad girl had undergone. So even that would, that part of the story you could touch in your paper and elaborate more probably. Thank you so much, and congratulations once again. Let us now move to the next presenter of the session. This is Aparna I. Joy from the Department of English, Mar Ivanus Autonomous College. This is University of Kerala. And the topic of the research is Estranged Realities in Audrey Niffenegger. Niffenegger is a very contemporary name, and also a name associated with complexities of what we have and what we miss in our life. And Niffenegger gives more importance in her works to what we don't have, and she finds what we don't have as more profound than what we have in our life. What we miss is more profound to her in terms of death. And she's a wonderful artist and painter, so she associates her works with the painting.
Hello, ma'am. Good afternoon.
Yes,
Good afternoon, ma'am.
good afternoon. Good afternoon, Rituparna ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Okay, so
Good afternoon, ma'am.
good afternoon. Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Well,
yes, please, ma'am.
Good
yes.
afternoon, ma'am.
So let's
Yeah.
invite Aparna I. Joy for her presentation.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, ma'am. So the title of my paper presentation is Entangled Agencies in Audrey Niffenegger. From a theory to explain anomalies on the periphery of theoretical physics, quantum theory has evolved in its application to become a highly detailed narrative of the kinds of being that permeate both our daily lives and formal attempts at knowledge acquisition. Physics is the discipline of knowledge that examines the composition of matter and the interactions between the fundamental elements of the cosmos. Modern physics theoretical framework, quantum theory, describes the nature and behavior of matter and energy at the atomic and subatomic classes. Quantum physics and quantum mechanics are terms that refer to the nature and behavior of matter and energy at that level. With the emergence of postmodern discourse, the possibility of bifurcation of facts and interpretation, the chance of division of science and humanities got deconstructed. Blending both science and humanities, literature provides a dynamic way of combining abstraction and facts, thereby entangling literary discourse with quantum mechanics. Thus, fiction refracts science, integrating new physics into literary works. The quantum fiction, the end product of literature and quantum physics, expresses the fluidity of reality. The writers experimented with science, engaged in combining and mixing up science and literature, taking into consideration the qualities of quantum physics. Quantum fiction explores the quantum world of infinite possibilities, a world of entangled agencies, and meaningful symmetries between modern science and humanities. This comparability between the actual virtues suggests that the worlds of particles and metaphors are analogous to each other. Therefore, it could be suggested that fiction offers an embodiment of many interpretations of quantum mechanics.
Despite obvious differences of science and literature with different meta-linguistic coding systems, Dennis Bohlenkamp states, I quote, both posit hypothetical words, both are judged at times by their degree of verisimilitude to what we regard as the real world. Some scientific hypotheses are valued to the degree that they can be verified, while fictions are frequently valued to the extent that they conform to a reader's experience of what is real. Both literary and scientific fictions can be aesthetically pleasing, both can be disturbing. I unquote. Our bodies, landscapes, and all the elements of nature are shaped by the writings, shaped by the workings of those mysterious subatomic particles in the realm of strange entanglement. Entanglement is at the heart of many peculiarities encountered in quantum mechanics and has enabled many groundbreaking tests on the fundamentals of nature. By thinking about Audrey Neffniger's work through a quantum theoretical lens, it becomes clear that the time traveler's wife displays the most obvious characteristics that support a reading of literature and fiction in the context of physics. This illustrates Neffniger's use of quantum theory. The plot is set in two different worlds, the classical world of the natural humans and the non-linear world of the time traveler. By taking a closer look at these two spheres, it becomes obvious that they are juxtaposed in a similar way as our classical physical world and the quantum world. The classical world, that one that we live in, is defined by determinacy, by cause and effect, as opposed to the probabilistic character of the quantum world. And this is the incredible love tale of Claire and Henry. Henry has an unique illness that causes his genetic clock to regularly reset, causing him to be unexpectedly transported into the past or the future. This unusual genetic condition that makes him randomly roam across time, ending bewildered and naked wherever the cosmos leads him. Depending on their ages at the time, they are frequently ripped from each other's arms only to reconcile weeks, months, or years later in more or less romantic circumstances. Henry and Claire fight to conduct regular lives in the face of a force they can neither stop nor control, is both deeply emotional and completely unforgettable. With two different points of view, Henry and Claire, from various eras and locations, the story advances. And the narrative of time travelers' wives include numerous flashbacks and flash forwards to the lives of the characters to more fully describe their traits and characteristics. The storyline generally leaves from one period and place to another without following a straight line. Quantum entanglement is a profound, known classical correlation between two or more quantum systems. The members of entangled systems do not have their own individual quantum states. Only the total system is in a well-defined state. This means that if two particles in the cosmos are entangled and some form of measurement is performed on one particle, which will change the original property of the other particle too. Because these two particles are intertwined and these two particles have a one-on-one connection. This seems paradoxical, for these particles do not need to directly communicate with each other, which is the same with Henry and Claire. Therefore, the two lovers are in an entangled state, influencing each other even if they are miles apart. And this analysis of the time traveler's wife shows that quantum theory cannot only be applied to selected literary works, but also to those that are rarely examined from the point of view of science. Just because the scientific aspect is not blatantly obvious, it does not mean that it is not there. The peculiarity of quantum entanglement is that even if two particles are millions of light years distance, when you measure one of them, you immediately know something about the other. Nefsneger portrays Henry as a person who is already aware of the phenomenon and its consequences. In several parts of the novel, Henry warns his other self, Claire and Gomez, his friends, not to try to change anything in the course of their lives because the outcome would be huge and unpredictable. Throughout the novel, Henry never changes anything in his time travels, even does not prevent his own death, although Claire begs him to change the course of events for once. And their constant and very obvious enslavement to the desire of the other is apparent throughout the novel, which can again also be referred to as particles striving for equilibrium. Over the past several decades, a growing number of scholars have dedicated their research to the discourse between science and humanities. While this is ideally a beneficial process for both fields, the ever-growing influence of capitalism adds a new side of possible detrimental effects of interdisciplinarity which need to be taken into consideration. Literature, it is suggested, can bring about positive changes in the minds of the readers. And if so, portrayal of quantum concerns through literature could galvanize the global populace to make development a step towards understanding quantum literature and interpreting life more. That's all about my paper presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aparna. Your paper was again a wonderful perspective, which looks at the diabolical, at the same time dichotomous, but a very complementing and beautiful, curious relationship of science and humanities. And of course, I wasn't expecting this quantum word, and the physics of the aspect of your paper was not mentioned in the title. So it was a pleasant surprise how you how you are looking at Nifneger as a very modern and progressive writer. And to me, she's intriguing because she paints the characters, she paints skeletons, she paints death, she paints negative, and then she kind of brings them together. And it's a wonderful mixture of these things in the Time Traveler's Wife. And these characters, they are again, one represents something supernatural and above, metaphysical kind of character, and the other is a very human, throbbing woman who loves and somewhere this very predictable and the unpredictable is also juxtaposed. So thank you so much for presenting it as a beautiful a kind of prism through which we are looking at this story, and which of course we can all have an access as a film also. It's a movie also, which I think it's very pictorial. This novel is very pictorial novel, and you can really feel that throbbing of the relations and the layers that involve in it. Thank you so much. So we don't have much time though, but if there's anyone who could just come in and give their inputs over this paper. I invite anyone who would like to come, because it's a very interesting paper, and somewhere it's a very modern kind of experimental work. So if there's any query or input. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yes, Aparna. And now we move on to our next presenter, Donna Maria Joseph from St. Jacob's Training College, Menamkulam, Trivandrum, Kerala. And the topic of research is From Ominous Abstract to Amiable Construct, Shifting Perspectives on the Concept of Death. So I think this paper would link us better from the previous paper to this paper. And let us just go through what our researcher says rather than wasting more time.
Yeah, ma'am, shall I start? Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So my title is From Ominous Abstract to Amiable Construct, Shifting Perspective on the Concept of Death. So as we all know that death has always been a subject speculation, and individuals' knowledge of this phenomenon is limitless and expandable. It was evident in the art and literature of the ancient periods. Thus, it could be safely assumed that the community had a narrow perspective about death. So the title, From Ominous Abstract to Amiable Construct, Shifting Perspective on the Concept of Death, analyzes anthropomorphism, attribution of a human form or personality to a god, animal, thing of death in Marcus Zussach's The Book Thief. So the historical fiction, The Book Thief by Marcus Zussach, first published in the year 2005, is analyzed for the study. Marcus Zussach is an Australian writer with Austrian and German roots. Marcus Zussach, in his piece The Failurist, which was conducted at Sydney in 2014, says that at the time of writing The Book Thief, he thought that no one was going to read the book. And so he might write it exactly how he wanted to. He reveals that it was that little bit of negative thinking that gave him the courage to follow his own vision completely. The author attempted to script the novel from the viewpoints of 3 different narrators before deciding on death as a narrator. The thought about a possibility that death is haunted by humans prompted him to rewrite the novel with the death as the narrator. So the devastating world wars gradually brought in a difference in the aesthetic sensibility and intellectual adaptability towards death. So when we move on to the inherent attitude of death, this novel introduces death in its emotive state to present the readers with an abstract character that shows humane values and ideas. The implied cognizance about the nature of the novel is that the author presented an immaterial idea in the comprehensive parameter of a human being. The assumed purpose is to direct the perception about the death from the xenophobic vision towards gradual acknowledgement. This novel serves as a vehicle of change to appreciate death, which is represented through the characters in this novel. Thus, it attempts to deconstruct the general attitude through individual representation in the background of World War II. So the narrative of death describing the situation in various situations can be seen in this book, and the different narratives were derived to maintain a culture on death, but alongside the realistic attitude enveloped the minority progress gradually. Life-altering events such as a mass genocide, war, and destruction were witnessed by the world's population. It brought in a sense of realism that changed the perspective of people to view death as an inevitable end to their life. So the attitude towards death saw a probable change. Many cultures celebrated and maintained the discussion regarding death. The end of the 20th century brought many views about death that also changed the construct on death that prevailed earlier, providing clarity on this unexplored aspect of death. It culminates in the literature of the age with this testimony of the opinion of the public choice of the particular. The author has created a probability for a change of perspective through the narration by death. Each reader is assumed to be presented with their own values, ideas, beliefs, which culminate in their perspective. The author has presented nuance in the general attitude towards death through careful representation in each of their characters, which will find intimacy with the readers. So when we are going to analyze the anthropomorphism and the transfer of human limitation towards the abstract concept of death, first of all, let me tell a definition, or let me describe the word anthropomorphism. So anthropomorphism describes the tendency to imbue the real or imaged behavior of non-human agents with human-like characteristics, motivation, intentions, or emotions. So in the novel, The Book Thief, the author has made use of different narrative strategy by narrating the novel from the perspective of death, which is anthropomorphized. So apart from the human capabilities bestowed on death, the employing of anthropomorphism seems to have conferred the transference of limitations of humans to death. The Maran instance could be pointed out to substantiate the same. Then death is universally deemed to be omniscient, but the novel presents certain nuances that expose that death is not omniscient in the complete sense, and it can be seen in some lines with the death narrates. This time I had come for a man of perhaps 24 years of age. This is the book 19. Here it is very clear that death is not completely omniscient and seems not certain about the age of the person he has come for. So when we look on the amiable nature of death, death can be seen revealing his amiable nature throughout the novel. It seems as through taking lives of people is not something that death does on his own accord, but is constant to do so. Death is not portrayed as villainous, rather it is a situation that possibly makes death appear so. And the caring and emotional feelings of death can be particularly seen when it goes for receiving the bodies of death. Death is being apologetic for doing what it is forced to do. Death ends the story by telling us about Lisa, which is a character, and when the death goes to collect her soul, when she was died, and when the death goes to collect her soul, he sets her down so that they can walk together for a while. He shows her the book thief and wanted to ask her so many questions about humans. He, as a friend, wanted to share his thoughts with her and seek to solve the riddles that humans have laid before him, but he restrains. Then I'm concluding my topic by saying that the title shows the anthropomorphic nature created for death in the primary source through its narrative technique and examine the degree of association and reception provided by the readers with theoretical assumptions. The novel was analyzed to its depth to reveal the evidence of Freud's story of death drive. The novel reflects the universality of Freud's story for his theory and promotes a line of thought of the presence of death drive inherent in an individual. The anthropomorphic narration of death is studied in detail on the character of death. The limitation of an individual transferred to an abstract concept has been practiced since the beginning of literature. So the use of anthropomorphism seems to have paved the way for the transference for limitations of mortals to death, thereby making it appear more human and relatable. So that's all about my paper presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Donna, Maria. Your presentation again was a very interesting attempt to kind of look at death as. I also observed that you have looked at death as a male. You've given a gender as well, because you're moving from abstract to construct, and you're moving from something which is ominous to something which is amiable, a man with a character, a man with a self-conscience, who feels guilty, who feels touched by emotions. And again, Isaac, as we look at Marcus Isaac as a writer, again we see that all modernist or postmodernist writers, or the writers of our era of the millennium, of course, who are entering into this, are carrying forward explorative kind of perspective towards storytelling also. So here we have death, and death with a personification. You've given a character when you were analyzing it. Of course, the perspective is of the writer itself, in himself. Well, it's a very dichotomous, yet a very interesting again combination, wherein Sherilyn, if I may say, the character who's dying, and how even death is not sure about many things. Death also has curiosity. Death is a pulsating persona. So and that again brings us to very modernistic understanding of what is happening to the literature of our times, what we can as readers have in store, and how free we are to judge, and how free we are to analyze what the writer has to say. So I think we move a step ahead when we as readers have this freedom to move into the sort of realm of the imagination of the writer, and decide and explore further, and I think reach the inner depths of the writer's mind as well. So thank you so much. Again, I invite any input from our listeners here. If somebody wants to join in and comment, or put in a query. Well, I think everybody seems to have been engrossed in your presentation, as far as I can think. And thank you so much, and all the best. I think this is a wonderful field to further and explore into and research on, this field of the layers of death and life, and dichotomy of the life, and when we think about death conceptualized in birth. Thank you. So with that, we move forward
Thank you,
to
ma'am.
our last presenter. Last presenter of the session is Annie Mary Jacob from she's from Giri Deepam Institute of Advanced Learning, and she looks at pregnancy, maternity and infancy in COVIDian era, a study on psychology of would-be mothers, new moms and newborn. So it's again, we expect an interesting one. So I welcome Annie here. Is she there? Yes. Is it Anne? Sorry.
Yes. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. So please take on
from him. Thank you for the words of introduction. Respected Chairperson Dr. Sunila Sharma, organizers of the International Conference, and other presenters. I'm Anne Mary Jacob from Kottayam, and today I'm here to present my paper titled Pregnancy, Maternity and Infancy in the COVIDian Era, a study on the psychology of would-be moms, new moms, and newborn. This paper attempts an analysis of the impact of pandemic on the psychological well-being of women during gestation and the characteristics of newborn. All the unprecedented challenges have really vexed pregnant women to a large extent, and specialists have found out that there is a correlation between the ubiquitous COVID-19 protocol and the increasing cases of complications during gestation. And psychologists have also observed a negative habituation developing in the infants who were born during the pandemic. A few key words of my research paper include neurolinguistic programming, pregnancy-specific anxiety, and postpartum depression. The materials and methods that I've used for my research include personal interviews with women who gave birth to children from 2020 up to, during the period ranging from 2020 up to 2022. And I have also interviewed gynecologists and the family members of pandemic babies. And I distributed a Google Form survey among them. And I would like to take you through the responses that they gave to the major deliberations that I have included in my paper. Let me move on to the PPT. Can you see my PPT?
Not yet.
Okay, just a moment, ma'am. Um,
Ma'am, since we are running short of time, maybe you can explain to us in the
Okay.
points.
But I wonder what's wrong with it. It was okay when I checked it. Mm. I really wanted to share the PPT with you, but anyway, I don't want to waste the time. So, the first question is: have you ever felt? Excuse me, ma'am. Am I audible now?
Oh yes, you're audible, very much audible, and we would like to listen into what you have found out. Of
Okay,
course,
sure. Because I really wanted to show you the statistics, I mean the graph, so that it would be more convincing. Anyway, let me move on to the question. My first question to the sample, it was, have you felt a sense of security while reading or listening to COVID-19 related messages over phone? So 55% of women said they were secure, but 45% of them said they were not secure. And the second question, were you anxious about your health and your baby while listening to hospital announcement regarding COVID protocol? And again, 95% of people said yes, and there was a minority who said no. And were you able to enjoy the crime thrillers and the COVID based short films and precaution advertisements that appeared in television while you were pregnant? Again, around 40% of women said they could not enjoy this. And next question is, were there complications like high blood pressure, placental problems, hypertension, bed rest, etc. in your pregnancy period? 55% of women had such complications. And next question, have you experienced increased stress in the work from home scheme while you were pregnant? 37% of women said they indeed had such an issue. Have you watched pregnancy and maternity YouTube channels during your pregnancy? 85% of women said yes. And the last question is, when compared to your first baby, does your second baby express fear and discomfort in the presence of people other than parents or siblings? Again, 30% of parents said their children have such issues. So let me take you to the first point, that is better use of NLP. So from these responses, I could find a few generalization, and the first one is that all of us were using neuro-linguistic programming in one way or other, knowingly or unknowingly, and like how effective it was and how it can be used in a better way. That is my first point. NLP can reduce fear, control negative emotions, and anxiety. Neuro refers to a neurological system, and linguistics is all about the influence of words and body language on others. And programming is an element that refers to individual experiences that involve internal code. The government of India has brilliantly utilized NLP through various modes to create awareness about the fast spreading coronavirus. It has been successful to a large extent, but the psychological impact of such techniques should be analyzed in detail for better measures in future. Social media and Ministry of Health tried their best to ensure good health, but it is highly recommendable to focus more on the psychological well-being of women during and after their gestation period. Here lies the relevance of developing researched content for NLP techniques that can ease women to a great extent. The prenatal and postnatal wing in every hospital should take this seriously, because when you play the same awareness content to all the wards in a hospital is really dangerous. See, there might be cancer patients, there might be cardiac patients, and there are a good number of women who are carrying. So it would only develop anxiety and panic in them. So you have to draft a carefully written, researched content with the help of psychologists to make sure that awareness is disseminated at the same time. It's kind of a soothing and pleasant message. So that is, see, the ubiquitous presence of such audio messages will only develop panic among women. And this is the general response that I got from the respondents. And moving on to my next point, that is regarding the kind of entertainment that was available during the pandemic. The movies, the short films, and the advertisements, and the celebrity messages, everything that came in the television. When analyzing them, I understand that most of the movies were crime thrillers. And even the short films, the treatment of the pandemic theme, it was really it should be analyzed further. And I've taken two Malayalam short films. One is 14 Days of Love, and the other one is Enda Narayanikku. 14 Days of Love is a beautiful short film which used the 14 days of quarantine as its backdrop. And the man and the woman, they fell in love with each other, and they are on a telephonic chat during all the 14 days. Of course, it's communicating the necessity of isolating oneself when you are affected with coronavirus. At the same time, that situation is creatively employed by the director. And the other one, Enda Narayanikku, also portrays two persons who are in quarantine. And at the end of the short film, we find that the male character, he dies all of a sudden, and this girl is facing such a shock, and we are all disheartened at the end of that. So what I'm trying to say is, when directors script their short films and movies, of course they can talk about the backdrop, talk about the current scenario, but it shouldn't be intensifying the intensifying worry among pregnant women or in general public. So they have to utilize that in a creative way. Maybe after a couple of years, when we have reached the recovery phase after the pandemic, we can talk more realistically about what has all about the bygone days. We will sit back and we will relax and think of all those flashback. That would be rather easy. But in times of pandemic, what we need is a rather entertaining, soothing kind of movie or short film. That would be better. This is my second point. And most of the pregnant women could not enjoy such portrayals. That's why I came to such a conclusion. And let me move on to the third point, that is work from home scheme and pregnancy specific anxiety. There is a correlation between pandemic induced stress and complications in pregnancy. As a result of unusual hypertension, pregnant women had to undergo several issues like placenta abruption, placental insufficiency, etc. during gestation. Preterm birth and low birth weight, they are the other two issues which came up due to this pandemic induced stress. And when we come to pregnancy-specific anxiety, it appears to be a definable syndrome reflecting fears about the health and well-being of one's baby, of hospital and healthcare experiences, of one's own health and survival in pregnancy, of impending childbirth and its aftermath. A woman may become anxious about a baby's growth, harm during delivery, or even loss of baby. So pregnancy-specific anxiety is not a new coinage. It's already there, even before this pandemic period. And this would be really doubled when women are forced to work from home. See, it's a mixed blessing. I don't say that it's totally negative. It was useful to a large extent. They need not drop the job. They could sit at the home and work, of course, but they had to sit for hours and hours in front of laptop using their mobile phones. So it would definitely create fatigue in them, and this would indirectly affect their psychological well-being, and finally intensify the pregnancy specific anxiety and lead to gestational complications. Then moving on to pregnancy vlogs, that's my next point. More than ever, we found the proliferation of pregnancy vlogs during the pandemic period. It, of course, was successful in creating optimism among pregnant women. They could think more of their baby and of the upcoming days, and it was informative too. But that it has its own pitfall. See, normally women are advised not to use much of phone, but since they have no other mode of entertainment, definitely around 85% of women have been viewing pregnancy vlogs regularly during their gestation. So this is yet another phenomenon which we could observe. Like it has its own benefits, but it has pitfalls too. Then moving on to postpartum depression, all of us know what it means. Like again, PPD was intensified by the isolation, the compulsory isolation of the new mother and the infant. See, formerly we used to have get-togethers like baby shower, or we will go out for baby moon and all, but these are not possible during the COVID period, and it really affected the harmony of pregnant women, or even like during the post-maternity period. This is really like that period. Much of hormonal changes happen, and there was zero scope for socialization and relaxation. It really intensified PPD. And moving on to the next point, that is the social development of infants. Social development begins with an infant's contact with others, and pandemic babies grow up secluded. So children grow uncomfortable in the presence of outsiders. See, they won't allow anybody to come to their home, or they are not comfortable when they go out of their home. And we can't blame anyone, but this is
and you will have to sum up now.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is, in concluding, I would like to say that people have to create a more they have to use NLP therapy in a more productive way. More awareness programs can be given to doctors, nurses, and health workers, so that they can use the NLP techniques effectively in the gynecology wing, in among cardiac patients, and among cancer patients, and everywhere. They have to carefully make a content that's not alarming. At the same time, it is need specific. So better use of NLP is the first and foremost point that I would recommend in the face of pandemic. And then the visual narratives and advertisements can also use NLP by blending creativity and psychology. And social media platforms can, of course, sift the content. Whatever message you get, it has to be sifted through a 3-tier sieve, I would say, whether it is true, whether it is useful, whether it is indispensable. Only after doing these 3-tier sifting, you need to forward a message, or whatever audio is played in a public place, it has to be sifted and then done. And of course, we have to ensure safe and hygienic peer group interaction for the pandemic babies, so that all the negative habituation would go away and they would grow up to be normal, socialized human beings. So I've come to the end of my presentation, and I'm really sorry that I could not present the PPT properly, but I hope I communicated what I wanted. Thank you, ma'am.
Well, what a session. This session was, taken from Coetzee to Nifnegger to Marcus Isaac, and then to the moms and the newborn. And we have moved from the colonial, from the nature's harshness, to the death, to the life, and finally death and life and mothers. So what a session, and the congratulations to the organizers for organizing and planning this session in a way that, almost every paper was interlinked in a way. A perspective on life, a perspective on death, a perspective on birth, and a perspective on mothers who went through so much during COVID times, and this has left us with a lesson learned that how much media, how much society, how much medical science, everything matters to us, and life as a whole, it's so precious, it's so valuable, and so much to be learned every moment, every day. Thank you so much, Anne, for finishing off with this wonderful take on life, birth, death, and literature, language, society. We see that it's a cosmos together. Nothing can be taken out of it, and to be and to be alive and to be, experiencing things. That is what literature is made up of. Thank you so much, everybody, for being part of this session. Before we leave, if anybody has to say anything, just take a minute.